the skirt. Hey, nothing's moving.
Just her body not real, and she not a hottie. Do not let these people lie to y'all.
All the cool stuff I'm wearing today is like not that visible in the camera. That's fine, whatever. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. My name is Tamia. I go by Silk Slips here and elsewhere. Today's video might be a little bit silly because I really have to try and dodge some copyright today. And yeah, I'm just kind of getting over a cold as well. So I apologize if my voice sounds nasally at all. I'm also dropping this late because honestly, life has me a chokehold right now. And I know a lot of people have been feeling that. But yeah, I do have a couple of other scripts that are already put together. So I'm hoping that I'll find some time to be able to shoot those. And in general, I just have like a lot of ideas that I'm hoping to be able to put out sooner than later. So another thing that I'm gonna have to know at the beginning of this is that there's like really no scholarly lit on today's topics: hyphy, swag, hashtag based, and jerk in English at least. That being said, today's video will be largely a combination of memory, personal anecdote recounted from my upbringing during these eras, and some articles and blogs that I could scrounge up on the Wayback Machine / things that I remembered were written around the time that these topics were initially relevant.
But the video that I have is really a picture, and it's them two in a hotel room, and that's the God's honest truth on my grandchildren's life. That them two was in a hotel room with, well, they had orange walls and a dirty lampshade, and they was holding money like this.
I also made a little playlist of videos that I found to be relevant during that era for added detail if you want to reminisce or just like see what all the hype was about. Two little pieces of theory that I'll be tying in are Jean Baudrillard's concept of simulacra and simulation when I talk about the clothing references being made, as well as Roblox gang wars and Roblox funerals, and there'll be like a brief mention of the TikTokification of IMVU. None of these words are in the Bible, etc. The other piece of literature that I'll be tying in more purposefully is Jacques Derrida's concept of hauntology to try and understand the music, which I see to be situated at the core of this particular subculture turned microtrend / fad. Sorry, it's raining here. Disclaimer, I can't talk about literally every single subculture within rap music, but I'll probably do more videos like this in the future as I have a lot of interesting things to say about how fashion trends could be broken down in correlation with rap music. There'll be like neat little bite-sized scrumptious videos for you to watch, but I need life to give me a break first. So yeah, I don't know, things are moving way too fast for me. Anyways, consider this to be the best and only existent fashion-oriented analysis of swag, hyphy, hashtag based, and jerk existent in the English language. Let's go. Okay, I first encountered what I consider to be the swag renaissance upon seeing a particular side of TikTok that I now consider myself to be like an anthropologist, a little bit mystified by, to say the least. And if you're over the age of maybe 24 or 25 and you also have TikTok and you see the trend moving that I'm talking about today, you might be familiar with a lot of the old YouTube and MySpace videos that sprung back into popularity around 2020 to 2022, particularly highlighting the dances proliferating regionally across the American rap scene in the early 2000s, like choreographed dancing videos.
Left and tip it right. I don't need the trip, I take a sip and tip it all night. It be my night. Yeah, I'm on my tippy toes. Then I move my arms up in the circle like I'm jumping.
Jerk videos were really big at one point. Often these camcorder videos uploaded on TikTok after decades of existence on YouTube featured remixed songs by young producers sharing their work in place of the original sound that existed with the original video. It's an homage and unwitting collaboration of sorts. And in the same vein, we saw the notable popularity of rappers like Tisa Korean.
Why me do my dance with my cup in my hand? Why me do my dance with my cup in my hand?
Creating the direct connection between TikTok's dance trend phenomena and one of its oldest predecessors. The early 2000s dances that rappers would create alongside their songs to bring about tangible virality, if that's a word, and encouragement to listen, learn, download, and connect.
Stunner shy, you. Stunner shy, you. Stunner shy, you. Stunner shy, you.
There's also like cross-coordinated communities on TikTok wherein people are reviving the dances and the outfits to go with them alongside other dances, and even crossing the dances with each other and incorporating them, even though they exist from different eras, as they have more to reference over time, right?
See me on a different. See me on a different type of I ride foreign and I still ain't got no license, nigga. See me I'm a different type of nigga. I ride foreign and I still ain't got no license.
Like wearing an outfit inspired by Soulja Boy in 2004 while doing a dance that was created in 2014, a decade later, but then with all of the technology that is currently available to us in 2024. If we look into what songs are gaining popularity themselves, they're often written with nostalgic ad-libs and LimeWire, virtual DJ, and early FL Studio stock sounds, again in homage to what was technically primitive soft/hardware while having access to and using new technology to achieve the same sounds and appearances. If you remember this Soulja Boy mixtape, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He used as many of the sound effects as he could that were available on Fruity Loop Studio in the early 2000s to produce what I consider to be a masterpiece exemplary of the early internet, despite the fact that when it dropped, it was largely just like a flex of Soulja Boy's production skills in his mid-teens. I think my favorite that I hear in a lot of these new songs and TikToks is the re-addition of bass boosting to the point where it sounds like it's coming out of a car with no back doors and no seatbelts.
Gotta get that. Gotta get that.
Without veering too far into other styles, other worlds, I'd say the looks primarily feature the greatest 180 in fashion in the last quarter century. The jump from tall tees and mid-calf jorts to tight-fitting v-necks and skinny jeans in any utterance of color that stands out. I think largely because of the growing mutual influence held between underground rap, EDM, and indie rock music seen with the introduction of the internet's blogging era. Do you guys remember lookbook.new? It was a website where people posted their outfits and linked where they got everything, primarily to explore street fashion photography, which also died just after this era. And I'll explore that deeper in another video probably, but I think that this is an important note to say because I will be bringing it up just a little bit later. And on the topic of that stylistic 180, I guess like if I were to like lump the things together, I would say that today's styles can be visibly like split up into like fitted hat, tall tee, long jorts, AF1s, babes, bandanas, rags, and washcloths in your back pocket / hand versus Vans, V-necks, American Apparel hoodies, Converse skinny jeans, and alternative piercings like eyebrows, stretched ears, snake bites, etc. Altogether, commonalities that I see, like if I were to put the styles in one big Venn diagram, in the center of that, we'd see the sandwich method, unique customization like airbrushing, a Nike ID website / app, bold colors like Firetrack red, cyan, yellow, the Justin Bieber purple that was like really popular for some time, graphic tees, and if we want to like really go deep, we could also talk about the silly glasses of the time and Jesus bracelets and Jesus pieces and those big cubic zirconia earrings as well. The imagery is very vivid. The filter usage was incredibly primitive. Picnic was a popular editing tool a lot of people used to alter their photos on Facebook, and this was also a time when many were beginning to transition from some kind of T9 slide phone.
Real tight, man. I'm the only one with one of these, man. Ain't nobody got one of these, man. I'm the only one with this Xbox sidekick. Ain't nobody got one of these. Bam.
To a smartphone of sorts, usually a BlackBerry or an iPhone later on. This was to take advantage of new apps of the time like Instagram and Tumblr. I don't know how to describe this, but I think there's something interesting about the original Instagram filters as simulacra, which I will be getting into that a bit later, because it expanded on sepia and black and white editing capabilities that mimic techniques of film development and preservation, then being applied to Instagram via a pack of go-to overlays resembling photo grain, film negative borders, and other aspects of older analog mediums that were primarily used for the profession of photography or highly personal family movies or like family photo albums, only really shown to your loved ones up until the internet prioritized the sharing of personal pictures across the masses. If you've partaken in any sort of film-based photography at all in your life, you'd have noticed quickly that the filters didn't really look that much like what they were intending to look like, but that it was just the start and something that has been expanded really widely now. It was a foray into giving people the ability to use state-of-the-art current technology, including recognizable presets, to make your photos look vintage or created with older technology. This, at its core, is hauntological. By meeting the supposed death of a medium by mimicking it in a way that's kind of ugly, but again, we'll get to that soon. And at the same time, while that's had a massive impact on the way that people edit their photos today, it also speaks to the marketing of dying art while it still exists and is still available. I was going to Walmart for $5 1-hour developments, if you can believe it, when I was like 14, 15 years old. And I didn't really know the difference between that and like what a professional photographer might be doing in a dark room. And I don't know, all I knew is that was like my favorite hobby and the cheapest place that I could go to ensure that shooting a new roll of film almost every month for years was possible, until Walmart stopped offering it and I had to go find a better place to develop my photos. But that was incrementally more expensive, and I'd say it's gotten more expensive over time. My 9/11 Indie Sleaze video will be dropping next and explain that. But yeah, also in a similar vein to what I was speaking about before, jerk, already a thing, is what a lot of Gen Z and like Gen Alpha, I guess, have been dubbing this new ushering in of bass boosted rap music that intentionally sounds like its quality has been degraded all throughout. In particular, if I'm to give anyone credit to my view of the proliferation of these new styles of music and what has now been given to similar and the same dances being reiterated in the 2020s, dubbed as jerk, I would have to point to underground artists and producers like Cash Paint, Netspend, Xavier Sobeys, Tony Snow, Cash, Raise Nova, Exxon, DJS, ISIS Gang, Certified Trapper, and like various others. There's a lot.
What about Drake? You like Drake?
No.
I'm very mystified by this side of the internet, and I don't know, it's really fascinating. I would honestly call it something else, like it's like something completely separate from what we were doing in like 2009 or whatever. It's like normcore emo jerk in a Chrome Hearts hoodie and Uggs, if you can believe it. I'll be real, I don't personally think that it should be called jerk. I think it'll develop its own name over time, hopefully, and I don't know, ultimately I don't want anybody to do what #they did to the Harlem Shake. Anyways, sound degradation being applied isn't that new, of course. I would suggest that its direct inspiration in its current iteration can be found in music by slightly older, well-known rappers that are popular on TikTok, like Lancey Fu, Lucky, Yeet, Destroy Lonely, etc., just to name a few, all of whom have massive outreach and impact here despite not really being representative of the swag revival that I'm talking about. The music that seems to be at the core of this could be said to be inspired by the aforementioned rappers as well as ones from every generation prior, since the old sounds make up the new sounds. The bass boosting, the crazy dubs, the rampant ad-libs, and the overall application of what sounds like intentional glitches seems to stem from the natural phenomena of old computer software that were popularized prior to the careers of every rapper or producer that I've named so far. The early 2000s is where we see bedroom producers gain notoriety as they have a way of partaking in the market on an international scale via more pedestrian means than were previously available even in the 90s. Now we have this massive market on the internet established to control the endless archive of information that is at our disposal, but there are barriers to pulling back the veil on this distant space and time unless you have the memory or experience to recall it and are able to spread whatever tidbits you can, like mold spores or virality, if that's a word. Again, I don't know if it's a word. The little red squiggly line appeared underneath it when I typed it. So the way of dressing still is similarly very much focused on stunting, flossing, shining, and things of that nature. I have to also note here how the Christian cross is somehow a recurring theme of swag over generations, and also viral dances. As I said, TikTok has really changed the way that dances become a part of culture. People were doing Soulja Boy's Crank That for years after its peak in popularity, whereas now, around 20 years later, learning new dances rather frequently has become a central task for people on TikTok, even being the starting point of brand deals and paid occupation for a select few. As my good friend Monica and I have learned in research many years ago, time is a pizza with many toppings and bubbles of cheese popping in the oven. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about happens simultaneously, and I mentioned Baudrillard's simulacra a bunch because he was pretty cynical about the 21st century. Like he felt as though signification and meaning has reduced over time, stating in the 1990 edition of Seduction that because of the extent to which the economic shackle to the functional has imposed its principle of utility anything which exceeds it quickly takes on the air of play and futility. I said this in my War on Information video, but essentially things are only as relevant as capitalism allows them to be. When I acknowledge this, it makes me wonder about the reasons behind this particular aesthetic revival and why this. What is going on that people think wearing different colored skinny jeans again is like cool? And is it hashtag base in anything other than an aesthetics revival? This is a really bad pun. The words that I'm pointing to in particular are intriguing in meaning alongside each other. Swag as an effortless, self-assured style or way of being. Hyphy and crunk refer to partying hard, a state of bliss, if you will. And based is about devout honesty and being yourself, as Lil B put it. So let's get into a historical timeline of the music and the fashion as it pertains to those topics. I'm very aware that I'm not talking about everything. For instance, I neglect to include some rappers into these definitions because I see them as belonging to entirely different worlds for other videos. I'm just giving key references to swag, based, jerk, and hyphy right now, but I don't know if you have any others or any like anecdotes that you remember, feel free to put that in the comments, babes. Anyways, back to the conceptual swag timeline, let's go. Okay, so we're starting both in Atlanta, Georgia and Oakland, California in the mid-90s when the terms crunk and hyphy were coined by rappers Lil Jon and Keek to Sneak respectively.
Hyphy, what it do? The Sheezy. That's my word. I'm smoking purpose, sipping yak. Inhale out, I'm prime to miss, causing asthma attack.
Keek to Sneak is said to have invented the word hyphy, whereas Lil Jon is said to have just introduced the word crunk into rap and broadened it into colloquial lexicon. It's also kind of undoubtable that there existed a new psychedelia wherein getting hype, crunk, etc. was directly connected to an emerging culture of substance use in rap music, varying regionally across the United States, and a lot of the colorful eccentricity that we think of in terms of swag starts here. I think clothing customization culture, and in particular airbrush tees and sneakers that exist amongst Black American communities, is integral to connecting what I've dubbed early internet hyphy / crunk from the 90s into just around 2002, and early internet canon swag from 2002 to 2008. At the beginning of the millennium, the internet was really young still, and people largely relied on blogs and forums and peer-to-peer sharing tools like Napster and then LimeWire to learn about and acquire new music. Social media starts to gain some traction, and it wasn't until the MySpace era when Soulja Boy, also from Atlanta, Georgia, rose into prominence that you see this massive trend development of some styles that I'm reimagining today. Soulja Boy gained mainstream attention and popularity via his dances, mixtapes, and internet feuds with other rappers. Here you also see the frequent espousal of words like swag and of course wavy by Max B. Okay, fun fact about tall tees. They were introduced in New York by Henry Abadi, who was a Syrian man who'd left his home in 1971 when Hafez al-Assad was inducted into presidency. Abadi started a wholesale business in 1985 selling 40-inch tees as nightgowns / loungewear for women, but his primary customer actually ended up being Black and Latino men wearing these shirts for style, or swag if you will, and soon with its increased popularity, other retailers would even refrain from selling them for fear of being associated with gang culture. Of course. And as I mentioned, airbrushing culture was quite popular as well. This all started with car culture in the 1950s when Kenny Howard, aka Von Dutch, and Ed Roth, aka Big Daddy, were among the first artists to take techniques behind custom airbrush painting on hot rods and apply them to t-shirts. In the 1980s, New York-based graffiti artists Edwin Fade Sakasa, Raphael Kashim Avery, and Clyde Nike Harewood then began applying their graffiti skills to airbrushing shirts in a similar fashion, but given a parody that was brand new at the time. This time period is the advent of characters like the Pillsbury Doughboy / Dope Boy, Gangster SpongeBob, and Gangster Stewie moving into the early 2000s. This style continued on in popularity for over a decade afterwards, and the cartoon characters and means of parody still exist today. It's just kind of shifted and evolved to include ice and chain customization, which is absolutely fascinating to me also. Another unforgettable trend transcendent item of the time was the the new era fitted cap with the sticker still on, signifying not only where you're from or what team you're on, but as well keeping the sticker was a means of added freshness, added newness, inadvertently or not. The Yankees Fitted, New York City of course, was met with controversy in 2007 when New Era dropped a series of hats that had paisley bandanas and a crown embroidered into some of the hats, and they ended up being banned subsequently because of a perceived association with gang culture. Notably, by the mid-2000s, color in accordance with swag and masculinity expands greatly, and the welcoming of colors like pink and purple are adopted more broadly by rappers unafraid of displaying a difference in taste and style, more so perceived to be queer and or feminine. So what comes to mind immediately is Kanye in his pink polos out of Chicago, and then Cameron as well in 2002 at New York Fashion Week in his pink mink. I'd attribute the popularity of purple to DJ Screw out of Houston, Texas specifically, not because he wore it super often, but because of how much he alluded to the color in his music and the cult icon status that he achieved after sadly passing from the very thing that inspired his prolific chopped and screwed genre as well. Yeah, I'll definitely have to give it to Houston, Texas and its niche genre of rap music and what opulence can be viewed in a lot of Texas culture in general. I don't know, everything's bigger in Texas, you know what I mean? Like the appearance of a lot that goes on over there, and the car culture is there as well. In general, rap has been embracing a particular brand of eccentricity since its inception, with being a stunna, being flossy, the act of stunting, shining, etc., overall amounting to the attribution of inherent value to oneself, i.e. swag. Yeah, sneaker culture does this big one, and not to like get too into it, because again, that's another video. Like Bapes definitely deserved a little moment in this, and I didn't write too much about them. But I will touch on sagging a little bit because it sparked a lot of controversy over the years as well. And while I thought that this was more of an issue perceived in the late 2000s to early 2010s, LOL, the Obama era, and my president is black, my Lambo is blue, etc., the earliest known press written around people freaking out about pants sagging as gang related and or prison related was actually in 1988. So by 2014, people had been arguing about sagging for almost 3 decades. Again, when I remember it being a more notable trend, it was perceived as such an issue that in small pockets of the USA, sagging was deemed illegal and carried both fines of up to $500 and jail time up to 6 months. Particularly, I found this to be the case in various cities across Florida and Louisiana. This was obviously a combined race and class issue. If you were growing up in Baton Rouge in 2007 and came from a low-income family that could not afford the $500 fine, you would not be able to afford to stay out of jail for checks notes wearing your pants below your butt. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. That was definitely worth mentioning, but I'm not sorry. I get a little bit political in my videos. If you know me, you already know what it is. Anyways, so sagging as a style is routinely touted as having originated in the US prison system in the 80s as a combined result of safety measures put into place in those institutions, as well as lack of access, because you're not allowed to wear belts in jail. And the style then made its way out, kind of like Run DMC notably wearing Adidas Superstars with no shoelaces, because you're also not allowed shoelaces in the American prison system as well. It's also rumored that the sagging trend in prison was a discreet means of showing your like availability to other inmates, and as it says in this NPR article, both of those origins have been used as scare tactics to prevent young men from partaking in the trend. Just a little takeaway as we move through style in the 2000s. As I mentioned, it was the early beginnings of what became the Obama administration, and I think all of this backlash to the way black men were dressing combined with the existent respectability issues that have existed for quite some time, and also probably just like the 20-year trend cycle as well, just doing its thing. Skinny jeans started becoming popular, but that didn't really prevent anybody from sagging. Also, at first, skinny jeans were very closely associated again with femininity and queerness, as well as the alternative / indie rock scene that was happening simultaneously. The notable colors and the bling stay while the clothing pendulum shifts in the opposite direction. I don't know about causation, but I definitely see some correlation between the mass popularization of American apparel and its Made in America campaign / pro-LGBTQ campaign / the garment worker fair trade thing that they had going for quite some time, and its wearability for most demographics. The Obama admin and the very lib social justice Tumblr era, because of the pervasive neoliberal idea of like I consume therefore I am being a common thread across all three of those things, in my opinion. And across the board, we see a lot of misguided purchasing for the sake of representation, as well as wearing your opinions, only for us to find out that the people that were running these things that we were purchasing were, checks notes, allegedly abusing their staff and drone striking the Middle East. And people here were just like happy to get their hands on a neon yellow v-neck to signify the alternative or whatever. Moving on, by the mid to late 2000s, a new style crops up in California, speaking to the beginnings of the Hyphy era, which ended up maintaining a degree of popularity on Tumblr and Twitter when rap groups like The Pack were introducing us to rappers like Stunnaman and the famous, then turned infamous, Lil B. The EDM scene was also growing in popularity alongside all of the shifts in rap that I currently mentioned, and the two genres of music started to do like this weird melange. Yeah, I think that's also around the sweet spot for where jerk in its original iteration came from. Cloud rap, acid rap, and backpack rap seemed to start to gain popularity around 2007 to 2008 and continued from there. Namely, I'd point to Lupe Fiasco and his song Superstar premiering in 2007, Kid Cudi and his song Day and Night premiering in 2008, Wiz Khalifa's Cushion Orange Juice mixtape dropping in 2010, the popularization of skateboarding and skateboarding brands like the Hundreds, Diamond Supply Co., Supreme's box logos in particular, Thrasher magazine merch t-shirts, Vans, shoelace belts, etc. were closely linked to the cult following of Odd Future, notably Tyler Creator's style pre-2014. Though it was very much a Streisand effect that his humorous mockery of swag, hypebeasts, and local posers only led to more people gravitating towards his style and then incorporating it into the subculture of swag. Through that, we see the parody, eccentric color, and cartoon graphics continue, but it stretches over. There was also this moment of what I could only probably call anti-swag that seemed to track from LA, and essentially people who'd been wearing and loving Supreme for years were pissed. There's a simultaneous bubble of popularity that remained across the Filipino community on Tumblr, dubbed Ilipino/Swagapino in 2012, a style in-group that persevered from the Bay Area beyond for years thereafter. While we're still in the Bay Area, Brandon Lil B McCartney's solo career took off via his signature dance, cooking, his plethora of mixtapes, his like really torn up Vans, and his viral optimism, I guess.
Thank you, Base World, for being nice. It gets cold on these lonely nights. Never can respect it. Really, I value friends. You feel me?
He's been following like 1 million people on Twitter for some years now. It's very wild. I don't know. And then he faded into obscurity because of his tweets. That's what I'll call it. By 2012, Chicago drill and the associated status symbols of dress conjoined with that kind of took more precedence. Chief Keef's Back from the Dead drops in 2012, and we see the rise of rappers like Katie Got Bands, Lil Reese, Fredo Santana, producers like Young Chop and D Gaines, and many others putting Southside Chicago's rap scene on the map and eventually becoming incredibly known worldwide. Drill continues to be very popular even now and definitely solidified a major shift in this particular genre towards trap music.
To you, like, what is drill music?
We started the word drill with our music. Like, let's do a drill. We started that shit.
Like, how would you explain drill music to someone who doesn't know?
Music that make you want to kind of get outside and go just get outside, you know?
The same could be said for rappers like Waka Flocka Flame and Gucci Mane out of Atlanta. Canon, swag, / jerk, etc. in and of itself, as I've been describing, eventually starts to become too pastiche around this time. A$AP Rocky can be notably credited with bringing to the popular imagination what it can look like to amalgamate pieces that fall under the swag umbrella with primarily avant, high fashion brands and streetwear together.
Rap Simmons, Rick Owens, usually what I'm dressed in.
I think his style at that time also appealed to a more goth-esque sensibility that hadn't been so visibly present in rap music for decades at this point. Shouts out to 3 6 Mafia though. And I would be a fool not to mention Space Ghost Perp for his style of production and the way that he dressed, which did influence A$AP Rocky for sure. Yeah, I would say that Perp was a pioneer and Rocky just like made it all popular. Yeah, streetwear photography, as I mentioned, was huge and necessarily moved around trending images across social media platforms that defined the time period. I think streetwear photography's incorporation into the culture was directly inspired by photographers who worked Fashion Week, like Tommy Ton and Scott Schumann, the sartorialist, as well as Cobra Snake and Terry Richardson. Ew. And then swag was kind of in this weird purgatory until 2014 when everyone hung up their tees as snapbacks and it faded into obscurity. Now that some time has passed, the boulder is gone and we have a surprise resurrection on our hands in 2024. And now from a more objective standpoint, we can see the holy quadrinity. Referencing Efrat Tseelon's chapter on Baudrillard and thinking through fashion, when you look at the pre-modern era, the best stuff was made for royalty and the societal elite. Everyone else was kind of just looking up to them, and once the styles were made available to the lower classes, it was in fabric that wasn't as luxe and they were hand-me-downs from their masters. In the modern era, you see technology and production get a lot better and more distinction arrives in the way that people dress because achieved status like uniforms of rank come into greater importance as opposed to familial lineage. New money and old money distinctions also arise during the modern era as achieved status then afforded people similar power to those who were born into it. The postmodern era is where we see the death of the true derivative. Baudrillard views fashion as a transition from a purely referential function that encodes symbolic meaning to a purely self-referential function that marks the end of meaning. In his analysis, simulation replaces signification. Fashion is a playful spectacle, a carnival of appearances. It empties signs of their traditional meaning. So my timeline was quite extensive, but essentially what I'm saying is that all of that stuff has resulted in Gen Z and Gen Alpha now engaging in the same art and online spaces that continue to be self-referential. I don't think it's bad. But I do think it's hilarious. One particular example that I have is the world of Roblox moving off of that platform and increasing the degree to which customization and remixing of meaning is inherent in partaking in the community, with Gen Alpha creating social media accounts for their Roblox characters. They're mimicking the fights that happen on baddies in the world of Roblox. They're throwing up sets and smoking as Roblox. Why are these ones? Why is this one in a gang? Why are they in jail? They're also holding funerals for their Roblox characters on TikTok. This is quite literally a page that's just like a dedicated funeral home for Roblox. IMVU, which started in 2004, is technically 2 years older than Roblox, which started in 2006. But I think IMVU was a bit more relevant to younger millennials and Gen Z in years past. And now they're pushing these like weird advertisements where IMVU is centered around TikTok dances. Like that's how they're trying to get you to play. Somehow the graphics look worse though. This looks like it was made on FaceApp. I don't know. I find the new IMVU kind of insane. I'm sorry. Realistically, these are games meant for kids and the kids are just having fun. They're not doing this stuff in real life. I think they're just, you know, they see things and they mimic them, as this video is about, right? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's like wrong that like a bunch of kids think it's funny to like put Roblox characters in a jail throwing up sets. But I do think it speaks to my theory. People are confronting the death of culture at even younger ages as the trend cycle glitches over time. This is where hauntology comes in. Jacques Derrida was a French Algerian philosopher who came up with the idea that culture continues to come back like a ghost to haunt the thing that it originally existed as. In Specters of Marx, he states, "To haunt does not mean to be present, and it is necessary to introduce haunting into the very construction of a concept, of every concept, beginning with the concepts of being and time. That is what we would be calling here a hauntology. Ontology, the study of the nature of being, opposes it only in a movement of exorcism. Ontology is a conjuration, this dimension of performative interpretation, that is, of an interpretation that transforms the very thing it interprets, plays an indispensable role. An interpretation that transforms what it interprets is a definition of the performative as unorthodox. What seems almost impossible is to speak always of the specter, to speak to the specter, to speak with it, therefore especially to make or let the spirit speak." Bro, that's kind of crazy to me. My interpretation of that is that culture in and of itself is life, but that in the death of a style or aesthetic or subculture, there is more life to be found afterwards. That being inspired by something that was also inspired by something else will lead to a new thing with a ghost attached to it. But also that going backwards is hard. There's no way for me to make someone who wasn't there truly know what occurred. Why skinny jeans became so popular for so long and then so uncool, and now people are endlessly insisting it's coming back. It's like a ghost. It's what I see when I see TikTokers doing the reject and the pin drop and swag surfing in parachute pants and Uggs. And it's what I hear when I notice producers on TikTok repopularizing the aka Ghetto Smosh sound effect 2, most commonly known to be in Nelly and Kelly's Dilemma, and the from Pharrell and Snoop Dogg's That Girl. Remnants of rap's punk revival features from the late 2000s are also peeking out at the moment. Think Lil Wayne's Prom Queen, Party Like a Rockstar. Mies is popular again, or still? I don't know, girl. But yeah, you get the point. I don't know. Logical conclusion, I guess. People are obsessed with turning things that already exist into a new aesthetic or core because a lot of stuff is derivative or self-referential now, and there's nothing we can do except continue to remix the out of everything with a slight personal touch and keep going until we get to the other side of whatever the hell postmodernism is supposed to be. Oh, and trust, there is another side. We just have to get there. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. Bizu bizu. Bye.
Tight, like shoulder to shoulder, so we are blessed that many numbers are coming in, and thank God for that. So we do have the bottle drive. So any bottles that you might have, you bring them in so we can collect them, we'll redeem them and use that money.